Oh, Brian, you forgot to mention Section 1. You skipped over Section 1. No, I didn't. I was waiting to do it right now. Thank you very much. Section 1 says, yeah, these freedoms and rights can be overridden, but under very, very strict conditions. And the first thing I'll say about this, which I said to the lawyers this week, who are contacting me now and saying, will you help us in the legal challenge, and how do you remember Section 1? And I say, I can't wait. They said, well, you might be called to court. One lawyer said to me this week, you might be called and have to get on the stand. I said, I can't wait. I can't wait. I'd like the opportunity to look every senior judge in this country, every appeal court, that's the highest court in each province, and every judge in the Supreme Court, I'd be able to look them in the eye and say, Your Honor, when we wrote Section 1, it was for war and insurrection. It was to be an unusual circumstance when the nation, as a nation, was in dire straits. There was about to be loss. The nation was about to be lost. That's what Section 1 was all about. It had to do with a dire... Why go through all the trouble of building a Charter of Rights and Freedoms and just see it collapse based upon some fictitious news about a virus for which 99% of the population get recovered anyway? It's like the old fellow on the wharf in Newfoundland used to say years ago. He was a real bright fellow, and then somebody would say, you got that wrong. He said, you think I'm stunned? Do the judges think we're stunned? We knew what we were doing when we put Section 1 in the Constitution. And besides not only having it to deal with war and insurrection, which was the context into which it was built, because the Constitution is very hard to open. I mean, we knew that in '81. I mean, there was a nervous tension in that room that you could cut with 10 knives. I mean, it was just unbelievable, because we knew this was a chance that wouldn't come for generations. You try to open the Constitution today, it'd be impossible, and will be quite likely for many generations to come. 7 provinces, 50% of the population, just to get it. Some of the things changed. Some of it is unanimity, others it's 7 out of 10 and 50% of the population. You won't get it. I'll come to that in a minute why. But in any case, here we are. So even with insurrection or war, here's what you had to do in order to violate or to override these rights and freedoms. What did you have to do? You had to justifiably demonstrate what you were doing. Not just justify. We weren't satisfied with justify. It's demonstrably justify. That's putting a heavy load on it. Demonstrably justify. What else? By law. Not by regulation. By law. By a new law. Don't drag up some other law from 10 years ago or 20 years ago and add some more regulations to that. By law. And I interpret that to be new law. By law. Reasonable limits. And number 4, that were consistent with a free and democratic society. Lots of luck in meeting all of that, governments. Lots of luck in trying to meet that. That's what that meant. That's what that means. And judges today at the lower courts so far, in the challenges that have come up, have ignored. You'll hear people talk about, even lawyers talk about the reasonable limits clause. No, sir. It's not the reasonable limits clause. It's demonstrably demonstrate with reasonable limits by law in a free and democratic society. Don't pick out one because it was convenient for you. List all 4. Put them together and see how hard it is to override that Constitution and those freedoms. Very, very difficult. So that's what's happening today. A lot of premiers and ministers are getting very bad advice from some people in their office or in the Justice Department or wherever, that somehow they can skirt around this. Well, I'm telling those people, you can't skirt around it, and I'm going to stay on my 2 feet as long as there's breath in this body of mine to argue with them, and I want to get to those courts and tell those people they don't know what they're talking about. is it easy now for the provinces to go along with the federal government? Why is it easy now for them to go along with it? Because we have 10 provinces, 5 of them are equalization or have not, and so they get special payments, okay, special payments. And the other 5 that are have get Canada health transfers, 40 billion this year, just in health transfers to all the provinces, have or have not, plus a social transfer of almost 20 billion. That's 60 billion flowing out from the skirts of Monsieur Trudeau. Out from his skirts come this $60 billion to be spread all over Canada. And now how am I going to replace that, says Premier Horgan, if he suddenly takes that away, or says the Premier of PEI or the Premier of wherever, right? So the country has changed dramatically since this Charter of Rights was passed, and has become far more dependent upon the federal government, right? Without a shot being fired, we're really dealing with a presidential republic, not with a parliamentary democracy. That's what's happening. Without a shot being fired, some of it behind our backs, some of it in plain view, and we didn't really understand what was going on. That's what's happened. The Prime Minister's office runs everything now. Runs everything, nothing happens. There's a covey of people in the Prime Minister's office every day of the week that looks at every newspaper, from Tofino to Bonavista to Iqaluit, to check just where the pulse of the nation is through these newspapers. And he has something on his desk every morning. He knows what's going on in every single part of Canada. That's just normal procedure now in the Prime Minister's office, right? That's what's going on. And how they hide it, how it's hidden, you'll go tomorrow morning and try to look at the Prime Minister's office, you'll only find 300 or 400 people in the Prime Minister's office. What was Brian talking about? Here's what I was talking about. There's another thing called the Privy Council office. And that's where the 1,200 and 1,400 are. Who do they report to? Prime Minister. And so add the Prime Minister's office with the Privy Council office, and you get your 1,500, 1,600 people working directly for the Prime Minister. And all of the ministers have to bow to the people, the bureaucrats, the unelected bureaucrats, those 1,500. They come in and try to get meetings with the Prime Minister and have to line up just like they were sheep. That's the way it's working. And in the province, to a large extent, it's working that way too. The Premier's offices are more powerful than the Cabinet itself. The Cabinet doesn't meet, usually it's Cabinet meetings now, Cabinet committee meetings, that's all. And every now and then a big Cabinet meeting where everything's already decided before they even sat down. And there's a guy there, the clerk of the Executive Council, writes down the minutes for the meeting, right? That's how it works today. So our democracy is very, very broken, very, very broken. And that's the reason why the premiers now, there's not a Lougheed around like it was years ago, or there's not even a Bennett around like it was years ago, or a Blakeney, or even a Levesque for that matter. We disagreed on the future of the country, but in every other way, the premiers liked Levesque. He was a very, very entertaining and informative, a very knowledgeable guy. We disliked his view of the country, but otherwise, he was and he was always honest. He was always open. He was always open out front of what he was trying to do. He didn't hide it. It wasn't secret. But that's why they can do what they can do now, because everybody is bought off in one way or another.